Hello gentle listeners, and welcome back to episode 10 of Whispers of the Past. I'm your host, Josh, and today we're delving into one of America's most enduring and eerie legends, the Headless Horseman. This isn't just a ghost story about a lone rider galloping through the woods of Sleepy Hollow. No, this legend runs much deeper, with roots stretching back to ancient myths and superstitions from Europe and beyond. What is it about a headless figure on horseback that strikes fear into the hearts of people across different cultures? And how did this figure come to haunt the American imagination? Today, we're not merely riding into the mists of Sleepy Hollow, we're crossing oceans and centuries to uncover the origins of the Headless Horseman. We'll start with a familiar story, one most of us know, from Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It was first published in 1820, and over the years, this eerie tale has found its way into numerous adaptations, from films to television series, cementing its place in American folklore. Set in the years following the American Revolutionary War, Irving's story follows Ichabod Crane, a lanky, awkward schoolteacher with an insatiable appetite for food, wealth, and the arcane. But beneath his comical exterior lies a man driven by ambition that leads him to pursue Katrina Van Tassel, the beautiful and only daughter of Baltus Van Tassel, one of the wealthiest farmers in the valley. Katrina's beauty and charm make her the object of desire for many suitors, yet none are more persistent or more dangerous than Brombones, a broad-shouldered, boisterous local who, like Ichabod, seeks to win her heart. As Ichabod arrives in the quiet, secluded town of Sleepy Hollow, he immediately stands out. Tall, gaunt, with limbs seemingly too long for his body and a nose that juts out sharply from his face. He's a figure of awkwardness, contrasting sharply with the rugged, sturdy men of the rural village. His profession as a schoolteacher sets him apart as well. In a town where physical strength is prized, Ichabod's knowledge of books, letters, and music does little to earn the respect of the locals. But what Ichabod lacks in physicality, he makes up for in cunning. He's a man who knows how to ingratiate himself with the families of Sleepy Hollow, charming them with tales of witchcraft and the supernatural, topics that both terrify and fascinate the superstitious villagers. Ichabod's obsession with the supernatural is perhaps one of his defining traits. Though a man of learning, his voracious consumption of ghost stories and tales of the occult only fuels his fears. He devours works like Cotton Mather's Wonders of the Invisible World, convinced that the woods surrounding Sleepy Hollow are teeming with spirits and spectres. His fascination with the paranormal, paired with his tendency to indulge in grandiose fantasies of wealth and status, makes him a peculiar, almost tragic figure. Ichabod isn't just pursuing Katrina for love, he's pursuing her as a means of securing his future. The Van Tassel estate, with its sprawling fields, fat cattle, and abundant crops, represents everything he desires: comfort, security, and power. If he can win Katrina's hand, all of it will be his. Yet, Ichabod's ambitions are not without their obstacles. Brombones, the local hero and Katrina's other suitor, could not be more different from Ichabod. Where Ichabod is lanky and awkward, Brom is brawny and full of bravado. He's a man who commands respect, not through education, but through his physical prowess and leadership among the townsfolk. Brom is not only charming and handsome, but fearless, a trait that endears him to the rural community of Sleepy Hollow. Brom, however, is more than just a rival. He's a trickster, a man with a mischievous streak who enjoys making life difficult for those he deems beneath him, particularly Ichabod. The rivalry between the pair isn't just for Katrina's affections, but is a reflection of the greater tension between intellect and physicality, old world superstition and new world rationality that characterized early American society. As Ichabod tries to win over Katrina with flattering words and musical talents, Brom plots to undermine his efforts with pranks and tricks, always staying just on the right side of decency to avoid direct confrontation. While Ichabod attempts to charm Katrina with his ghost stories and goblins, Brom's approach is far more direct. He seeks to show Katrina, and everyone else, that Ichabod is no match for him. On more than one occasion, Brom and his gang have played pranks on Ichabod, utterly mocking his superstitions and feeding his fears. Yet Ichabod, oblivious to Brom's schemes, presses forward in his pursuit, confident that he can outwit his burly rival with his knowledge and wits. The tension between the two rivals reaches its peak during a fateful autumn evening when Ichabod is invited to a lavish party at the Van Tassel farm. The evening is filled with laughter, food and dancing, and it's not long before the conversation shifts to the topic that most interests the superstitious residents of Sleepy Hollow: ghosts, tales of spirits wandering the woods, of the restless dead haunting the town's dark roads, fill the air, and Ichabod, already on the edge of his own fearful nature, listens intently. The most chilling story, however, is that of the Headless Horseman, a ghost said to haunt the roads at night, searching for his severed head. According to local legend, the Horseman is the spirit of a Hessian soldier who lost his head to a cannonball during the Revolutionary War. Now, he rides through the valley, terrorizing those who dare cross his path after dark. As the party winds down, Ichabod mounts his horse to ride home through the dark woods. His mind, filled with the ghost stories from earlier, begins to play tricks on him. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sends a shiver down his spine, and as he reaches the infamous bridge, where it is said that the horseman must vanish, Ichabod's fears are realized. A shadowy figure, cloaked in black and riding a massive, jet-black horse, appears behind him. The rider is headless, carrying a glowing pumpkin under one arm. In a blind panic, Ichabod kicks his horse into a gallop, racing desperately through the woods as the spectral rider closes in. What happens next is a blur of hooves, branches, and terror. Ichabod's frantic flight leads him to the edge of a bridge, where, according to legend, the horseman should disappear. But, just as he reaches the other side, the rider hurls the pumpkin straight at Ichabod. The next morning, Ichabod is gone. His horse is found wandering near the bridge, and his hat lies in the dirt next to a shattered pumpkin. The townsfolk speculate on Ichabod's fate. Some say he fled in terror, leaving Sleepy Hollow behind forever. Others whisper that he was spirited away by the Headless Horseman. Brom Bones, for his part, seems suspiciously pleased with the outcome, especially when he and Katrina are soon married. When asked about the incident, Brom only chuckles knowingly, leaving the nature of Ichabod's encounter shrouded in mystery. Irving's tale is not just a ghost story, but also a reflection on the themes of superstition, social rivalry, and the American frontier spirit. The setting of Sleepy Hollow, with its misty, moonlight landscape and eerie atmosphere, is an integral part of the story, enhancing its supernatural elements. It's a place where the old world and the new collide, where reason battles with superstition, and where the past, particularly the dark legacy of war, still lingers. Sleepy Hollow, with its isolated, insular nature, is a town steeped in the folklore of the early American settlers. The misty forests and winding roads create a landscape where the lines between reality and myth is blurred, where it feels entirely possible for a ghostly horseman to ride through the night. At its core, the legend of Sleepy Hollow is a story of contrasts, between city and country, intellect and brute force, reality and imagination. It's a tale of how ambition, fear, and superstition can intertwine, leading to tragic, or perhaps comical outcomes. Irving's masterful use of humour and horror creates a narrative that both entertains and unsettles, leaving the reader to wonder whether Ichabod Crane's disappearance was the result of a supernatural encounter or a very human trick gone too far. The ambiguity of the ending, much like the nature of the Headless Horseman himself, continues to haunt readers, ensuring that the story of Sleepy Hollow remains etched in the American imagination for generations to come. Now let's move on to one of the oldest known examples of the Headless Horseman in European folklore, the Irish Dullahan. In Irish mythology, the Dullahan is a terrifying figure, and he rides a black horse, sometimes described as a skeletal creature with fiery eyes. The Dullahan himself is headless, and he carries his severed head under one arm. But this isn't just any head. The Dullahan's head has eyes that can see across great distances, and its skin is said to glow with the colour of decaying flesh. His head often sports a grotesque grin, adding to the horror of his appearance. The Dullahan is more than just a ghost. He's a harbinger of death. In Irish folklore, it is said that when the Dullahan stops riding, someone will die. Unlike the Grim Reaper, who merely collects souls, the Dullahan calls out the name of the person destined to die, sealing their fate. And, according to legend, no lock or gate can stop him. He rides freely, crossing the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. The only thing that can ward off the Dullahan is gold. And so, superstitious people would carry small bits of gold to protect themselves from this fearsome spectre. The Dullahan's origins likely stem from ancient Celtic beliefs about death and the afterlife. In pre-Christian Ireland, decapitation was thought to release the spirit from a body. The head was believed to be the seat of a soul, and removing it allowed the spirit to transcend to the afterlife. Some view the Dullahan as a twisted reflection of this idea, a figure embodying the terror of death and the liberation of the soul from the mortal body. Interestingly, the Dullahan legend shares similarities with the Germanic Wild Hunt, a spectral procession of ghostly riders believed to sweep across the sky on stormy nights. In many versions, the leader of a wild hunt is a decapitated figure, often a king, warrior, or god, who rides with his head in his hands. The wild hunt was considered an omen of war, plague, or death, and witnessing it was believed to herald disaster. This motif of the headless rider was so prevalent in medieval Europe that it spread through Germany, Scandinavia, and even parts of France and Britain. Germany also provides key inspiration for the Headless Horseman legend. Washington Irving's tale was influenced by German folklore, including stories of a rider without a head. In regions like Saxony, many stories circulated about headless horsemen haunting forests and roads. These ghostly figures were often soldiers or hunters who had died in violent, dishonourable ways, typically through decapitation, and were doomed to ride eternally. One German tale tells of a headless huntsman in the Black Forest. This figure was said to chase both animals and humans, seeking to capture their souls. Like the Dullahan, he was an omen of death, often seen carrying his head under his arm. Some versions tie this figure to the wild hunt, reinforcing the idea of headless riders as symbols of the supernatural and the afterlife. Another Germanic influence comes from the Hessians, the very soldiers Irving identifies as the origin of his horsemen. Hessian soldiers were German mercenaries hired by the British during the American Revolutionary War. Highly skilled and fierce, they were both respected and feared. Many Hessians fought in key battles and died on American soil, adding a haunting layer to the story. These soldiers were outsiders, and their violent deaths left them trapped between worlds. The image of the headless soldier may have tapped into broader cultural fears. In the early 19th century, Americans were grappling with the aftermath of the Revolutionary War and the violent upheavals in Europe, like the Napoleonic Wars. The spectre of war and death was palpable, and the idea of a ghostly rider searching for his missing head struck a deep chord. The headless figure symbolizes lost identity and unfinished business. But the exact nature of the legend shifts depending on its cultural context. For instance, in Scandinavian folklore, the headless rider often seeks justice for a wrong never righted. The Danish legend of the headless king tells of a ghostly figure betrayed and beheaded by his court, forever riding through the countryside with his head in hand, seeking redemption. In Scotland, the headless piper is a mischievous spirit. This ghost, decapitated during a clan war, haunts cliffs and crags, playing eerie tunes on his pipes. His music lures travellers towards dangerous cliffs or dark lochs, playing with the boundary between life and death through deceit rather than violence. In addition to these European connections, similar headless figures appear in other cultures. For example, in Japanese folklore, the Rokurokubi are supernatural beings who, by day, appear as normal humans, but by night have the ability to stretch their necks to great lengths or even detach their heads. While not a strictly headless rider, the Rokurokubi shares the eerie quality of the headless figure in its unsettling behavior. In South American folklore, particularly within the Andes region, there are tales of La Llorona, the weeping woman, who is sometimes depicted in a headless form, haunting rivers and seeking lost children. Though La Llorona's story is more about grief and loss, the headless aspect in some versions ties into the broader theme of decapitated spirits across cultures. The horse in these legends play an essential role. The black horse, often described with glowing eyes and unnatural speed, is as integral to the terror as the rider. In Celtic mythology, horses were linked to the otherworld, serving as vehicles for gods and spirits. The headless rider's steed often symbolizes a guide between the realms of the living and the dead. In some versions, stopping the horse mid-ride makes the rider disappear, adding another layer of complexity to the story. The Headless Horseman's influence extends into modern culture, where he has become a symbol of eerie folklore and gothic horror. Popular culture has embraced the image of the Headless Rider, reimagining it in films, literature, and Halloween lore. From animated adaptations to haunted house attractions, the Horseman remains a versatile and potent symbol of the supernatural. The continued fascination with the Headless Horseman highlights how deeply rooted and adaptable folklore can be. The character has evolved from a grim symbol of death and war to a figure of suspense and psychological terror. This transformation reflects broader changes in societal fears and cultural narratives, showing how folklore can be reshaped to address contemporary anxieties while retaining its core essence. Irving's tale also serves as a reflection of early American society's attempt to reconcile its European heritage with its new identity. The story taps into themes of cultural displacement, the clash between old and new, and the lingering effects of historical trauma. As such, the Headless Horseman is not just a ghost story, but a cultural artifact that reveals much about the era in which it was created. The figure of the Headless Horseman also represents a convergence of cultural anxieties. In American culture, his story encapsulates the early 19th century fascination with Gothic horror and the supernatural, blending European myth with American frontier elements. As we see with other folk legends, the Headless Rider serves as a lens through which we examine our fears about death, identity, and the unknown. Moreover, the horseman's persistent presence in popular culture underscores how mythological elements can transcend their original context and find new life in different forms. This adaptability is part of why folklore remains so compelling. From Tim Burton's film Sleepy Hollow to various Halloween decorations and adaptations, the Headless Horseman continues to be a versatile symbol, demonstrating the enduring power of myth to captivate and terrify audiences. As we draw to a close tonight, it's clear that the Headless Horseman is more than just a ghost story. He embodies centuries of fear, trauma, and superstition, from ancient Celtic myths to Revolutionary War battlefields, from grotesque apparitions to psychological terror. The Headless Horseman rides across time and space, changing with each retelling, but always reminding us that some spectres from the past are never truly gone. So, next time you find yourself walking down a dark, lonely road, and hear the distant thundering of hooves on a foggy night, remember the legends. The Horseman is out there, forever searching for his lost head, and reminding us that the past always has a way of catching up. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time and legend. I hope you enjoyed it and will join me in the future for more tales. If you did enjoy it, then please subscribe, leave a comment, or send me a review to whispersofthepast@gmail.com, and share my podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Josh, and this was Whispers of the Past.